Not from a TV, not from a neighbor's party. No, I mean the kind of laughter that shows up at the wrong time. The kind that drifts in from the woods at night, or from the other side of a closed door when you know nobody's there. I knew a man who heard laughter like that. His name was Elias Harper, a father, a widower, a man who only wanted to protect his little girl. But laughter doesn't care about love. It doesn't care about fathers or daughters. This story, this one sticks with me. I tell it because some stories don't stay quiet. They demand to be told. If you hear laughter tonight, faint, distant, just on the edge of hearing, don't follow it. Because sometimes it's not coming from outside. Sometimes it's already inside. The town of Millhaven was the kind of place where nothing much happened. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors who waved but didn't pry. A place where porch lights flickered at dusk and people locked their doors only because it was the smart thing to do. Elias Harper lived at the end of Birch Hollow Road, right where the pavement stopped and the woods began. It was a small house, 2 bedrooms and a backyard just big enough for his 10-year-old daughter Lily to chase fireflies in the summer. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. His wife, Amara, had passed away 2 years ago in a car accident. Since then, it had been just him and Lily. And like every father who suddenly has to play both roles, he told himself the same thing every night. I have to stay strong for her. It was a hot, sticky night in July, the kind where you leave the windows cracked to feel a hint of breeze, but regret it when the mosquitoes find their way in. On this night, Elias was on his hands and knees under the kitchen sink, wrestling with a pipe that wouldn't stop leaking. Water dripped steadily onto his forehead, slow and mocking. Outside, Lily's laughter floated in through the kitchen window. She was in the backyard chasing bubbles, her giggles sharp and bright. It was the kind of sound that could cut through the worst day and make it feel lighter. Then the phone rang. He grumbled, wiping his hands on his jeans, then reached for the wall phone. He glanced out the window once more before pressing it to his ear. Hello? Silence. Not static, not the hum of a bad connection. Just breathing, slow, steady, deep, like someone filling their lungs, holding it, then exhaling softly. Hello? Who is this? Elias's voice sharpened. The breathing didn't stop. It stayed slow, patient, deliberate. If this is a prank, I'm hanging up. There was a pause, then a voice. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was dry, hoarse, like it had crawled out of a long-forgotten place. Why is she all alone? Elias's heart stopped. He turned sharply toward the kitchen window, his eyes locking on Lily. She was still outside, alone. Her back was to him, crouched low, chasing bubbles that hovered near the ground. His grip on the phone tightened. And who is this? You watching my daughter? I swear if I see you, the voice on the line chuckled. It wasn't a full laugh, just short, sharp bursts of air, a giggle, but it didn't stop. It stretched too long, too steady. She's got such a sweet laugh, Elias, the voice rasped. I wonder if it'll sound the same when she's scared. Click. The line went dead. His pulse roared in his ears. Without thinking, he threw open the back door. Lily! Come inside, now! Her head shot up, her eyes widened. But Daddy, I'm playing. Now, Lily! She pouted but didn't argue. Her little feet thudded against the porch steps as she ran inside. Elias stayed behind for a moment, eyes locked on the tree line at the edge of the yard. His gaze traced every shadow, every swaying branch. Nothing moved, but that didn't mean nothing was there. That night, he checked every lock on every door and window, twice. The next morning, Lily sat at the kitchen table, eating cereal while Elias poured himself a cup of coffee. Her hair was a wild mess of curls, and she hummed a little song to herself as she ate. Did you get me a balloon, Daddy? She asked, not looking up from her bowl. Elias blinked. A balloon? No. Why? She pointed toward the front window. "There's one outside." His chest tightened. Slowly, he set his coffee down. He walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. There it was. A red balloon floated in the middle of the front yard. It was tied to a small wooden stake driven into the dirt. It bobbed gently in the breeze, swaying like it had been waiting for him to see it. He stepped outside, barefoot on the hot concrete. His eyes darted left, right, scanning the street. No cars, no footsteps, no one. He walked toward the balloon, each step slower than the last. When he got close, he saw something scrawled on the surface in thick, uneven black marker. "Hi, Lily!" His stomach churned, his breath hitched. He glanced up, scanning the street, the porches, the driveways. Nothing, nobody. He untied the balloon, gripping it tight. It felt warm, too warm. He squeezed it. Pop! The sound was loud, sharp, like a firecracker going off in his hands. His eyes scanned the street once more. Nothing, but he felt watched. That night, he sat in the living room with a knife on his lap. He watched the front door like it was about to open on its own. He didn't sleep. The soft ticking of the clock on the living room wall was the only sound in the house. Each second dragged longer than it should. Outside, crickets chirped in a lazy, uneven rhythm. Every so often the old house let out a groan, the way old houses do. But tonight, every noise felt different, louder, more deliberate. Elias sat in his chair by the front door, the kitchen knife resting on his lap. He hadn't slept. His eyes flicked to the blinds over the window every few minutes, waiting for movement. The weight of the previous day pressed down on him like a hand on his chest. The phone call, the red balloon. "Hi, Lily." He told himself it was just some sick prank, some neighborhood kid. That's what it had to be. It had to be. Then he heard it tap, tap, tap. It came from the front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes darted to the door, wide and wild. Tap, tap, tap. He sat frozen, every muscle in his body coiled tight. Slowly, he reached down and grabbed the kitchen knife, holding it firmly in his hand. Tap, tap, tap. He stood, his knees stiff, his breath shallow. His heart thudded so hard he could hear it in his ears. He moved toward the door, one slow step at a time, his socks silent on the hardwood floor, his eyes locked on the peephole. The house was so quiet now. Every creak in the floorboards felt like thunder. He pressed his eye to the peephole. At first, he saw nothing but his empty porch bathed in the glow of the streetlight, the small doormat, the potted plant to the side. Then, something moved. From the edge of the frame, a face leaned in. Pale white, black hollow eyes, lips painted into a wide red smile. It wasn't smiling, but the face was. The clown's head tilted slowly like it was curious. It leaned in closer, filling the entire view of the peephole. The white of its face, the sharp black points around its eyes, the crack in its lips where the red paint had chipped away. It didn't blink. Elias stumbled backward, breath caught in his throat. "What do you want?" he yelled, his voice cracking. The clown's head tilted the other way, the slow, deliberate shift of something that didn't care about time. Then it raised one gloved hand. Tap, tap, tap. "Knock, knock," it whispered, its voice muffled through the door. "No, no, 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 no." Elias shook his head, backing away from the door. His heart thudded in his chest like a war drum. His fingers gripped the knife so tight his knuckles went white. "Go away," he hissed, his breath shallow. "Go away." The clown didn't blink. Its eyes shifted slowly, following his voice. It leaned its head forward, pressing its face against the peephole, lips nearly touching the glass. "Knock, knock," it repeated, softer this time. Elias backed away until his back hit the wall. His eyes darted toward the hallway, Lily's room. He twisted his head back toward the door. The clown was still there, still watching. Its lips didn't move, but he swore he could hear it breathing. "Go away, you hear me? I'm calling the cops," he shouted. trying to sound braver than he felt. The clown didn't flinch. It didn't move. It just stared. Then it leaned closer. Its face took up the entire peephole now. Its lips, cracked and smeared with old paint, pressed against the glass. And then, softly, it whispered, "I'm already inside." Elias's head snapped toward the hallway. Lily's bedroom door was open, just a crack, enough to see that the closet door inside was open too. His heart stopped. No, no, no. He sprinted toward the hall, legs moving before his brain caught up. He hit Lily's bedroom door with his shoulder, slamming it open. Her bed was empty. Her blankets were crumpled on the floor. The closet door was halfway open, just enough for a shadow to hide behind. From inside the closet he saw them, two pale eyes. They blinked, slowly, deliberately. "Knock, knock," the voice rasped from the darkness. He stepped back, chest heaving, his breath wild and panicked. His eyes flicked toward the bed, the door, then back to the closet. "Where's my daughter?" he growled, voice shaking with rage. "Where is she?" The closet door creaked wider. It crawled out, not walked, crawled. One long arm, then another. Its fingers bent backward as they gripped the floor. Its body slithered out, joints twisting unnaturally, shoulders shifting with sharp, jerking movements. It wore baggy, filthy clown pants, stained with grime. Its arms were too long, its fingers tapping softly against the floor. Elias stumbled back, breathing hard, knife raised. "Get back!" he screamed, his voice cracking with fear. "I swear I'll kill you!" The clown didn't stop. It pulled itself forward, its grin stretching wider. Its head hung too low, upside down, like its neck had been twisted the wrong way. It froze, just inches from him. Its head turned slowly, too slow. Bones crackled with each tiny movement. From behind him, a small voice called out, "Daddy!" His heart froze. His eyes widened as he spun around. Lily! She stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes with her tiny fists. Her hair was a mess, her face half asleep. "Daddy, why are you yelling?" she mumbled, her voice groggy. He blinked, his mind spinning. He turned back to the closet. Empty. The closet was empty. No eyes, no clown. Nothing but hanging clothes swaying gently like they'd been moved. No, that wasn't possible. It was there. It was right there. He dropped to his knees, pulling Lily into a tight hug. His whole body shook as he clutched her close, eyes darting around the room like a man still being hunted. "It's okay, baby," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm right here." She yawned against his shoulder, too tired to notice the way his hands shook as he held her. But as he hugged her, his eyes stayed locked on the closet. It wasn't empty. It was never empty. Elias sat at the kitchen table, a cup of black coffee in front of him. His eyes were hollow, his face pale from lack of sleep. The lights in the house were dim, just enough to see, but not enough to feel safe. His gaze stayed on the window. Every shift of a shadow made his heart jump. Every rustle of the leaves outside made his fingers twitch. Lily was in bed. He checked on her 3 times already. She was asleep, her small chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of peace that only children knew. He wished he could feel that peace too, but he couldn't. Not after what happened the night before. The clown, the eyes, the crawl. He gripped his coffee mug tighter, his fingers trembling. "I'm losing it," he muttered under his breath. "I'm just tired. It's just stress." Then a sound. Not a knock, not a tap, a laugh, soft, faint. But it was there. It came from the backyard. His body went rigid, his eyes darted to the window, fingers curling into fists. The sound was distant, like someone trying to stifle their laughter. It cut off sharply, like it had been caught. He didn't move, didn't breathe. His eyes locked on the window. Hee-hee, hee-hee, hee-hee. Closer now. The sound crawled through the air like it was coming from every direction at once. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood. He moved to the window slowly, step by step, his heart thudding in his ears. He pulled the curtain back, his breath shallow. The backyard was empty, just the slick, rain-soaked grass and the distant tree line, dark and tangled like a black wall. But something was wrong. The swing set. It was moving. It was swinging. The wind wasn't strong enough to do that. It wasn't strong enough to make it sway back and forth, slow and deliberate, like someone had just stepped off it. His mouth went dry. His eyes scanned the edge of the woods. Nothing, but he felt it. That feeling of being watched. The hairs on his neck stood up. His breath grew shallow. Slowly, he reached for the back door lock, turning it carefully, trying not to make a sound. The moment he turned it, the lights in the kitchen flickered. Flash. Darkness. Flash. On the second flash, he saw something for only half a second. A figure standing just at the edge of the woods. His heart slammed into his chest, his breath freezing in his throat. He whipped his head back toward the window. Nothing. Just the trees, just the dark, but it was there, it was there. He didn't blink, he didn't breathe. He watched the tree line for nearly a full minute. No movement, no sound. Just the soft pitter-patter of rain. Then something changed. In the distance, one of the trees shifted, not swaying, shifting. It leaned forward like something was hanging from it. It wasn't a tree, it was a person, hanging upside down from one of the branches. Its arms dangled, its legs were hooked over the branch like a bat, and even from this distance, Elias could see the glint of white paint on its face. The clown. It hung there, motionless, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, too far to the side. Then slowly its hand lifted. It waved at him. Elias stumbled back, his heart thudding wildly in his chest. No, 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 no! He reached for the phone on the wall, his fingers trembling so hard he almost dropped it. He dialed 911, his breath shallow and fast. The line clicked. It didn't ring. Instead, a voice answered. "Why'd you look, Elias?" He froze. His body went stiff, the phone pressed to his ear. His blood went cold. He knew that voice, the clown. His eyes slowly turned toward the window. The swing was still moving. He hung up the phone. His breathing was shallow now. His mind spun in all directions. He had to check on Lily. He had to check now. He sprinted toward the hall, his socks slipping on the hardwood. He hit the wall with his shoulder but didn't stop. "Lily!" he called out, his voice cracking. Her door was closed. He shoved it open so hard it slammed against the wall. She was there, curled up in her bed, blankets pulled up to her chin. Her breathing was steady, her face soft with sleep. Elias leaned against the wall, his knees weak. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Okay," he whispered, his hands trembling. "Okay, it's okay. She's okay." Then he heard it, a soft, slow giggle. Hee 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 hee. His eyes shot to the closet. The door was open, just a crack. No, no, please no. He stepped forward slowly, his breath shallow, his eyes locked on the dark sliver of the closet. He reached out his hand, fingers trembling. He grabbed the edge of the door. "Don't be there," he whispered to himself. "Don't be there." He yanked it open. Nothing. Just clothes. Just darkness. He breathed out, shoulders sagging. He stepped back from the closet, his chest heaving. He glanced at Lily. She was still fast asleep. Then he heard it. A sound behind him. Squelch. A wet, sticky, squelching sound. He turned slowly, every muscle in his body stiff with terror. The closet wasn't empty anymore. It stood there, hunched over, its head tilted sideways. Its grin was too wide now, stretching to the corners of its face. White paint cracked and flaked off its cheeks. Its hollow black eyes were locked on him. The clown. It lifted one hand, its fingers bent backward like spider legs, its head tilted, bones creaking like old wood. Then it spoke. "Knock, knock." Elias's eyes filled with tears. His hands shook as he raised them, his whole body shuddering. "Who's there?" he whispered, his voice cracking. The clown grinned wider, its black eyes narrowing. It crawled forward, its knees bending the wrong way. Its arms dragged along the floor like wet rope. Its face got closer, closer, until it was inches from his own. "Yours." Elias didn't scream. His body froze as every muscle locked tight. The clown's face filled his vision, the sour smell of grease paint and rot filling his nose. The last thing he heard was the soft, sweet sound of a little girl giggling. Hee hee, hee hee, hee hee. And this time it didn't stop.